Guys, welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you for joining me again for another episode. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. So thank you for that. And today we welcome to the show a very special guest, and it is Mr. Rohan Carr. Rohan is a theatre automation and production expert who recently just finished on A Little Life at the Harold Pinter Theatre and subsequently the Savoy. He's involved in many different projects, such as Geek Chick. Links for that you'll find on his Instagram page and website, which is down below in the description. Another GSA grad on the podcast, believe it or not. Rohan did theatre production, stage, and production management. His roles in behind the scenes include technical production manager, tech swing, stage supervisor, and many, many more, including sound and stage assistant positions. And Rohan has been a part of some amazing shows over the last year, and not only just A Little Life at the Pinter, but also Lemons times 5, also at the Pinter. Good with David Tennant, Merrily We Roll Along at the Southwark Playhouse, Constellation at the Vaudeville Theatre, Magic Goes Wrong at the Apollo, and Time Traveller's Wife also at the Apollo. And that's just a small sample of the work that Rohan has done. A proficient show caller and stage manager. And again, links to his other work, website, and CV is down below. So feel free to check it all out. But without further ado, Rohan, how are you?
Hi, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. You're making me sound significantly more experienced than I think I am, but that's amazing.
No, but it's all on your CV, man. I mean, that's if I'd read out your whole CV, I could have gone on for another 2 minutes.
Amazing.
It's brilliant stuff, man. So yeah, how are you?
Yeah, really, really good. Thank you. Keeping incredibly busy, straight off the back of A Little Life and into another project. But it's an amazing time to be kind of working in theatre. There's some really, really exciting stuff going on.
Good stuff. Can you say much about your next project, or is it all kind of under lock and key at the moment?
I think I'm allowed to announce it now. I'm head of automation on the Time Traveller's Wife at the
Oh,
Apollo.
there you go. There you go. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Good stuff. So let's jump in. So the first question, as always, for every guest, to begin at the beginning, as Dylan Thomas says, where did it all start for you, man? The love of the arts and stage management and all that kind of stuff. Where did it all come from?
So I think it started at about 7 years old,
Mhm.
and I joined a drama club in Chesham, where I grew up, called Di Burnett Youth Theatre. Literally like village hall drama club that had the time of my life. Started off kind of going, do I want to be on stage? I started doing the acting side, and then at about 11 years old, I started doing lighting and sound for their shows. And since then, it's pretty much been that track. I've been pretty single-minded since about 11 years old. And yeah, so it's been, 13 years later, and here I am doing what I'm doing now, which is just a bit crazy. Little
Yeah.
11-year-old me, playing with little faders on a lighting desk in the corner of a village hall. And now I'm basically doing the same thing, but for 1,000 people a night in the West End. It's very, very crazy, to be honest.
That's amazing because you're fresh off the back of A Little Life, as you mentioned there, at the Savoy, was something we're going to talk about a lot today. But what was it about theatre production and being behind the scenes that was so appealing, do you think?
I think for me, it's the kind of gratification of knowing that what you're doing is directly affecting the experience of these thousands of people. And I'm sure actors will say exactly the same thing.
Mm.
It's very much the case of you are making people feel things. And what I like about it is the fact that we're making people feel things in ways that they don't expect. By how we do a scene change, or how we create an illusion, or this and that. We're directly influencing the experience, but it's not as much of kind of an in your face way of doing it.
Mm.
With acting, what you're saying is affecting the audience. But with us, what we're doing, how quietly we walk around backstage, how fast the scene changes, all affects the audience's experience, but they don't necessarily know that it's doing that.
Mhm.
It's a very kind of subliminal thing, although it's an incredibly active job.
Mm.
It's a very subliminal thing. And I like the gratification of knowing that you have changed somebody's experience, sometimes without them knowing it.
Mm.
And that's, I think, what keeps me going, knowing that by tweaking this or by tweaking that, you're continually kind of improving the audience experience as you go through a production.
Mm.
tightening things up, and you're getting to be the best at what you can do. Um, and in the process, directly affecting both the people backstage who you're working with and also the audience who are sitting out, in the auditorium.
Yeah, because you mentioned there, like actors sort of make, so we create the world, but it's off for that, it's that lighting cue that really gets like that moment, makes it more special or more impactful, or that sound change or that moment where it's something to do with the tech
Yeah,
enhances it, isn't it?
I think that's the thing. I think, you know, if Rachel Tucker sung Defying Gravity
Hmm.
in a completely bright space with all the lights on and she stayed on the floor, it would still be an amazing experience.
Oh, of course.
But by adding that moment where she flies into the air and the lighting and the sound and the special effects,
Mm.
that then makes it a show
Hmm.
as opposed to a performance. And I think that's the thing. I like to think of us as the difference between the rehearsal room and the show,
Mm.
because a great show can stand alone without all of the technical elements, which is kind of proven by the thousands of people currently performing at the Edinburgh Fringe with minimal tech.
Mm.
But I think once you add those elements, it then becomes something quite different. And that's I mean, personally, that's my opinion. I'm sure other people would say different, but I think
Mm.
um I like the fact that we're doing something actively to improve the performance. And if what we're doing isn't improving the performance, we're not doing our jobs right.
I'm sure you've done. I've done that on many occasions, man. So we'll just go back just a couple of steps. We're going to talk about some of your work in just a moment, but obviously you're another member of the GSA family to also be on the podcast. Tell me about your training, because, like I said, you did theatre production, stage and production management. What was your experience of GSA, and what was your training in stage management like?
I love GSA. I think I mean, I went to see a lot of drama schools and I went to experience a lot of drama schools. GSA
Hmm.
had the kind of community feel that I was looking for.
Yeah.
You're in a town, you're in a very busy drama school. We do a lot more shows than some of the other drama schools. And from my point of view, the fact that I had that multidisciplinary training, we weren't just doing stage management, we were doing a bit of lighting, we were doing sound, we got to do some video, like that, I think is what has led to me being able to do what I've been able to do. I think, and people who do come out of GSA on my course, I know, are never just one trick ponies, that they're very kind of multidisciplinary. And I think that element of the training makes us highly valued in our industry, because we're able to do things that people wouldn't expect us to do.
Mm.
I'm able to go and hang a light when I'm working as a stage manager.
Mm.
And that little bit of insight and that understanding of what everybody's doing, I think is, from my point of view, the most valuable part of that GSA training.
Mm.
And also from my point of view, it's why I think GSA performers are often so highly regarded,
Mm.
because they have that experience of working with technicians as peers as opposed to as staff. And I think when your technical staff are your peers, you develop that kind of ethos from the get-go. You know that those people that you're working with are people that you're working with and not people who are working for you.
Mm.
um, and I think that's why GSA performers tend to be very, very popular among backstage staff. I mean, certainly I know that in we've got how many performers, 12 going into Les Mis,
Yeah.
um, all
Crazy.
of who are incredibly highly regarded by people backstage because they are kind people and conscientious and they know what other people are doing. And I think that's such a valuable aspect, having those technicians and performers as peers as opposed to people who are staff and students, has a massive, massive impact, both on from our perspective as technicians, because we get to understand what the needs of the performers are from a peer perspective as opposed to just we're serving you. And the performers end up being able to kind of appreciate much more what these people are doing because they're of a similar age to them. And
Mm.
you're going, wow, you're doing this at so and so years old, and we're going, wow, you're doing this at so and so years old. And I think that's such a valuable aspect of the school in general. And I think any drama school that has a technical and performance contingent, I think is absolutely the way to go about training, for sure.
Absolutely. So what was it like on like a day-to-day basis? What would a typical day at, doing training to be a stage manager? What was it like?
So we had obviously seminars and classes, and what we typically do is around a third of the year would be our seminars and our classes, and we'd have top-ups throughout the year. But then the other 2/3 of the year would be working on performances and learning from experience, which I think personally is one of the only ways that you can feasibly learn. You can learn the theory all you like, but doing the thing in person is what makes you at the top of your game. So a typical day, we would probably come in the morning, and if we were working on a production, we'd probably spend the first hour chatting about our goals for the week or goals for the day, what we still needed to achieve, and then from there, it's pretty much all systems go. So you'd be between the rehearsal room, the workshop, propping, talking to other technical departments. It's predominantly a conversationally based industry. Like a lot of what we do is actually just soft skills, talking to people and communicating to get what we need out of not only the show but also each other. So it's very difficult to sort of give you a typical day at GSA, because it literally changed on a daily basis as to what we were doing. One day I could be hanging lights in the ivy, and the next day I could be making 3 dead rabbits hung on the end of a bit of string.
Right.
It could literally be a completely different experience from one day to another.
Yeah. It's like, well, what did you do today? I made 3 dead rabbits.
Absolutely. And sometimes genuinely that is the conversation that you have with somebody, and they go, what? And I go, I know. That's exactly, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think, having been to GSA myself, a big, on the acting side of things, we did a public show in our studio called Pat's Studio. And, there was a moment towards the end, I won't say what happened, but I think I've already revealed it anyway. But anyway, so there was a moment towards the end where I had to get a certain prop to sort of show things, and you sort of rely on the stage management crews. Like, you are part of this production as much as we are. We are all together in that. And then towards the end, it would be like, there was one night where we were looking around for this little prop towards the end. It was so important. We're like, oh God, where is it? We can't find it. And they came, one of the stage manager came, oh, here you go, it's all right. I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. And it's those routines. I think that's a big thing. And anybody who works in the industry will tell you that once you get into a show, it's those established routines, and you rely on those routines to keep you sane. Those little moments of interaction and that person handing you that thing at the right time. There is as much of a choreography backstage as there is on stage. And I think those routines and those little interactions are really what keeps you going, because the whole time that you're honing that craft, and that you're tightening things up, and that you're making things a little bit better, and you're handing something, and it gets to a point where you can hand somebody something without even looking at them, and I think that's the magic of what we're doing backstage. And I think both from an acting perspective and also a management perspective.
Yeah, hugely.
I think just honing and tightening is always what ends up happening.
You want things to run on stage smoothly, and therefore backstage has to run smoothly as well, because it's a big 100%. Team game, huge team game.
For sure.
So having been in like the West End, as I mentioned there, you've done 3 gigs at the Pinter, you've done the Vaudeville Theatre, the Southwark Playhouse. Your title is theatre automation. What does that mean exactly?
So I've moved into automation fairly recently. Within the last year, I've been kind of working almost exclusively in automation.
Okay.
And automation basically is the process of moving pieces of set, but not by hand. It could be things flying in and out. It could be things coming on and off stage. It could be a revolve in the middle of stage. And basically my job is to make sure that runs. I program automation. So with basically a computerized software, the same as you would lighting or sound, you program it, you then operate, and then a key part of my job, more than anything, is the safety aspect of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm performing regular maintenance checks, but also during the show, I'm spotting, making sure that people are in the right place, making sure that nothing's going to hit anybody, making sure that people are safe. And I think that's for me, I think the biggest part of theatre automation, from my perspective, is that safety element.
Mm.
Um, you know, what you're doing is moving tons, like literal tons of scenery
Mm.
up and down over people's heads, right in front of people, right behind people. And your job, more than anything, is the coordination side of that, to make sure that what you're doing, which is an inherently dangerous thing, is happening safely.
Mm.
And I think that's, yeah. So, I mean, automation basically is just moving things,
Just maybe things.
which sounds incredibly boring,
No,
but I think it's so much fun. So,
no, I know it's fun. I mean, I can imagine it's sort of fun. So, did you have any close calls? Was there any one thing in particular that you worked on which was that you sort of not dreaded? I'm not sure if that's the right word, but you were particularly focused on to make sure this has to go right every night.
for sure. I mean, I did Mrs. Doubtfire in Manchester.
Oh yeah, of
And
course.
that's a
Yeah.
very big show. So that's a very, very large show. And
Mm.
the current automation team are absolutely amazing. I mean, they're completely at the top of their game. They're incredible, incredible people. And I played a very small part in the automation of Mrs. Doubtfire. But for those of whom have seen or haven't seen it, the house goes upstage and downstage, and that house weighs about 1.5 tons.
Wow.
And then the thing that then obscures the house weighs another 1.5 tons. So
Wow.
you're moving literal tons. And I mean, close calls is, my hope is to never have a close call.
Mm.
But the physical action of making sure that everybody was safe, everybody was on the piece of scenery when it started to move and on it at the end, that things were fired at the right time, that you were continually listening to the deputy stage manager calling those cues while looking at something else,
Wow.
while, providing feedback to the person from the automation department who's on stage. That element of it, obviously there is always a sense of adrenaline, and I think that's the big thing. I mean, with A Little Life, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, there's a moment at the very end of the show, with some performer flying. So a very, very large piece of scenery comes in the middle of stage, and the actor disappears. And that's done through the method of performer flying. We pop him into, in essence, a lift, and lift him up behind the box. And that obviously is always when there is a person dangling from the end of your hand, basically. There is always that element of, okay, this is high stakes.
Yeah.
And not just high stakes from the fact that there is an actor there, but also high stakes from the fact that you are looking after that person. Your responsibility is the safety of that person.
Mm.
And not only that person who you are looking at, but all of the people around. Because if something rolls under that box at any point, you need to stop it, because you don't want to crush a glass on stage and have glass on stage or something like that.
Mm.
I think from that perspective, it's there is always a sense of adrenaline whenever something's moving. That you have to be on high alert, because your responsibility is to avoid accidents.
Mm.
You know.
That's great. As we say, like on front of stage, they say sometimes if something goes wrong, they say the show must go on, and actors sort of find a way of just improvising or just finding a way to kind of recover something that's gone wrong. But from a back of house, from a behind the scenes perspective, when something does go wrong, not something like huge as, like dangling an actor literally with your hand or something on stage, but if something goes wrong behind the scenes, what's like a good way of responding to that? Is it literally just a case of improvise and just like, well, just fix it later or put it back together now? What's the routine?
So I think it would depend on who you are backstage. If there's a sound issue, 9 times out of 10, we can swap their microphone. We can make that work. We can fix it.
Yeah.
If there's a stage management issue or a prop issue, we can probably fix it. From my perspective, the safest thing to do is always to stop. If something is going to hit somebody, I stop that thing.
Yeah.
I don't slow it down and eagerly push the person out of the way. I stop. Because from my point of view, the art is not secondary. I don't think that's the most diplomatic way of putting it. But from my point of view, safety is always the first priority.
Yeah. It's like your health comes first, doesn't it?
100%. And I think that should always be the case for anybody, but from my point of view, the safest thing to do is always stop. There are certain times where you can problem solve things and you can fix things. And, if something goes slightly wrong, you can adjust and you can make things work. But from my point of view, personally, I would always stop. From the majority of other departments' points of view, they would always keep going.
Yeah. And, there's a thing that happens quite a bit. I remember when I was growing up thinking, you do like school plays and stuff, and sometimes you have to stop or something like, like, oh yeah, but we're just kids, this is just a bit of fun. But I thought, in London theatres, there's no mistakes, there's no show stops, nothing ever goes wrong. It's perfect every night. And now I've realized sometimes it's not always the case, and, I've been to see a couple of shows where they've had a show stop. For anyone who doesn't know, it's when the stage manager comes on and says, look, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we have to stop. Something's gone wrong. So when you're backstage, and I know we were talking before we came on, you've had experiences of show stops in some of the work you've done. When you know that's on the cards, like, do you get like a voice in your ear going, okay, right, stage manager's going to go on now, we're going to have to stop, something's gone wrong, or there's someone in the audience who's not very well? What's that experience like?
For sure. I think there is always an element of forewarning. Be that from the front of house team who we're communicating with, usually via kind of radios, or from our team. Typically, the deputy stage manager is the person who tends to kind of handle the coordination of that.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate to work with amazing deputy stage managers who just make you feel so at ease, because realistically, stopping isn't the problem because we can start again.
Yeah.
Obviously there is that element of making sure that the stage manager has their microphone and making sure that everybody's in the right place, everybody's aware. But typically these things are, I wouldn't say rehearsed, but the actors know if the stage manager walks on stage, we just walk off calmly. And that's really how we have to deal with a show stop. Because in that situation where we're stopping, the thing that we want to do is stop the show. Fixing said problem is a secondary thought. The first thing you do is go, how do we stop this safely? So yeah, typically I'll have somebody come into my ear if I'm operating automation. Typically I'll have somebody come into my ear. Hi, Rohan, just so you know, it's likely that we're going to be stopping shortly. No problem at all. If I have a move coming up, I will say, do you want me to do this move? Do you want me to wait it off? And typically, if there is something massive about to happen, if there's a huge scene change, we'll stop before the huge scene change. Because also it's easier to start from there. You don't have to reverse everything and put it all back. But typically it's just a voice in my ear going, hi, we're going to stop. And from my point of view, it doesn't really affect a whole lot. You know, if I've got a piece that's moving, I slow it down and stop it. If I don't have a piece that's moving, I take my hands off the desk, and I go, okay. And I sit back and I let the people whose job it is to stop the show do their job. And, stage management teams are so versed in show stops and all of the scenarios, and they're thinking about all of these scenarios all the time. And there are so many procedures and backups and all of this that they've created, that from my point of view, it's such an easy experience because they're just handling it and they're always handling it with such kind of professionalism and diligence, that from my point of view, all I have to do is take my hands off the desk. Make sure I don't press anything.
Okay, just don't press it. Yeah, Professor Gun sound.
Yeah, exactly that though. Do you know what I mean? You just have to, everybody just goes and we'll stop.
And we'll start again. Okay.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
no, I think it's good. There's a good communionship. I remember seeing a show and there was a show stop and they sorted it out, and then basically they had to, the next scene was a key on the piano it had to play, and someone pressed the key or the chord, wherever it was, and the actor just went, as we were saying.
Exactly that though. And there is this complete everybody knows that it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
And as long as you take it with good faith and good humor, and
Mm.
you appreciate what's happening is the best thing to happen, it's great,
Yeah.
and it happens everywhere.
Mm.
I don't think there is a show in the West End that has not stopped at least once,
Yeah.
because it happens. It's a very unpredictable environment, not least because of, what happens on stage may change on a night by night basis. Somebody might deliver a line differently, or somebody might
Mhm.
trip on their way onto stage, but also the 800 to 1,000 people who are sat, who are the biggest variable every single night. And,
Mm. Mm.
um, and so many technical elements, it's going to happen at some point. And I think, you know, if anybody has never experienced a showstop before, just let it happen.
Yeah, it's gonna
Just let it
happen, guys.
happen.
It's gonna happen.
100%. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I remember that same show where the actors, before he said, because it was weird because some show stops, the actors come off stage and then they sort of sort the problem out and then they come back. But on this one, they just let the actors just sit in the space while they try to sort it out. And at one point, there was a newspaper I think it was a prop newspaper on the table, and one of these actors just picked it up and just started reading it.
But you have to.
Yeah.
I think, there is a complete you just have you have to just go with it.
Yeah.
And often, like, some of the nicest moments that we've ever had have been, I mean, magic goes wrong. We would
Mm.
have some show stops occasionally for various reasons. And I was working with such an amazing group of comic performers who quite often would just go and stand out on the fore stage and, tell a joke or do a little dance, or, and the great thing about those mischief shows is that even when it goes wrong, these performers are so used to that environment and, coming up with comic moments of what goes wrong. Actually, it almost improves the show. And a lot of the time, people think it's part of the show. Yeah, I've been told some amazing stories about mischief show stops,
Oh,
and various things around their shows, and I just yeah, utter admiration for their kind of teams, because my God, it's incredible.
absolutely. No, and for a show like that, it fits perfectly. And like you mentioned it just now, I mean, the clues in the title, magic, or the play that goes wrong. So it fits perfectly with that. Just before we're gonna get onto a little life in just a moment. I've got quite a few questions for you on there, but just one more thing before we get onto that is, has there ever been a time where there's been a showstop at like a really kind of really pivotal moment where you think, you don't have to like mention anything specific, so I don't want to get you in trouble or anything, but was there any show you've done where you've heard the stage manager go, we're going to have to stop now, and you've gone, not now, oh please not now, please not now? This is a
Yeah,
pivotal moment.
I mean, there is always, and often if it's an audience related showstop, it will happen in a moment of high drama.
Oh, of course,
Because, there are, and be it, I think there was a stop that happened once, which was one of I think the stage releases some show reports each year from various shows. And there was one of them where they stopped because the woman in black appeared, and a lady in the audience got so frightened that she fainted immediately. So yeah, and obviously that is probably the worst moment you can possibly, like, the first time the woman appears and the lady goes and then faints.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, they happen all the time in the most
Yeah.
awkward possible moments. And 9 times out of 10, if you're gonna stop, it'll probably be at a point where it's really awkward to start again. Because that's just life,
Absolutely.
If something bad's gonna happen, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think often it's those moments of high tension, high drama, high adrenaline, and then sometimes even the moments just after, when the audience member relaxes, and because they relax, all the adrenaline goes and they just go, and then they become ill, or faint, or who
Yeah.
knows. These theatres are warm.
Oh, they're very warm. They're very warm. Yeah. I think there was a story I heard from someone who went to see the Seagull, also about the Pinter. I don't know. Did you have anything to do with that? Were you offered it at all?
I had my friend Josh, who did both Good and Lemons, and is currently doing, I think, Dr. Semmelweis there,
Oh,
was
yes.
the lighting operator.
Oh, great. Yeah. I think some friends of mine went to see it and there was an audience related. I don't think it was a show stop, but because it was very warm in the theater. And of course, the seagull, it's Chekhov, it's slow,
Yes.
it's takes its time. And this audience member thought it was a good idea to go have a boozy dinner beforehand and ultimately had to be ushered out because he was snoring too much.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah,
We had
that
to
is
get him
pretty
out.
awful, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking, but and also people have paid a lot of money for those seats, and you don't want, someone to ruin your experience like that, right?
100%. And I think, there is always going to be audience disruption. There is always going to be, I mean, if you talk to any front of house member of staff in
Mm.
anywhere, they'll tell you exactly the same thing, or a horror story about an audience member, or, you know,
Oh yeah.
um, I think, all we're trying to do is make the show happen.
Mm.
And if something impedes that, then, you know, it has to be fixed.
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's jump in, man, to your most recent credit, and was possibly the theatre highlight of 2023 for a lot of people, not just for London audiences, but the world and possibly even Broadway. I don't know if it's true. I'm not asking for any dirt or anything, but I have a strong feeling this play might end up in Broadway because of the popularity of it. And of course, that was A Little Life with a certain James Norton. For anyone who hasn't seen it, actually, just to say, if anyone who hasn't seen it, the cinemas are going to broadcast it on the 28th of September. Get on the littlelifecinema.com website. You'll take the nearest cinema, book your tickets now. It's a play about, it was written by Hanya Yanagihara with original text. It's about a story of Jude St. Francis, who at a very early age is exposed to a lot of very, very brutal, deeply traumatic events in his life. And for me, my taking of the play was like it was like the long-term effects of such childhood abuse and all that kind of thing. So it was a really intense but beautiful, beautiful piece. And you got to live it out 8 times a week. And of course, on top of all that, the show ran when it was uninterrupted for 3 hours and 45 minutes, sometimes twice in one day on Thursdays and Saturdays. So what was it like?
Um, I mean, it was a beautiful experience. The
Yeah.
show is just like no other. There is no theatrical experience that I have ever had that matches um, just the work that we put into this piece of theatre. Um, it's tough. It is an incredibly taxing show, mentally and physically, both for those on stage and off stage.
Mhm.
It's a very long show, and the themes are obviously, incredibly distressing.
Yeah.
Um, but I think what we all found the most comfort in was the fact that we had this incredible team behind us,
Hugely. Yeah.
all of whom just approached the project with such great humor and grit and determination, and everybody just wanted to make this thing as beautiful as it could be. And I think that's, from my point of view, the most heartwarming part.
Mm.
The fact that what we were doing was such an amazing thing to be doing in a
Mm.
London theatre.
Yeah.
Kind of is what got us all through the project. We had such an amazing team of people, all of whom were incredibly passionate about the project.
Mm.
It was just like, I don't think it sort of dawned on us quite what we were doing until the first night in Richmond,
All right.
where we did our first preview, and we went, wow, okay, this is really special.
Mm.
And it's just such a special project. Again, it's not an easy project
Mm.
by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel so proud and pleased to have done it.
Mm.
And just this overwhelming sense of gratitude. Everybody is just so, it's just, such an amazing group of people, and a project to have worked on.
Yeah. So, because you worked at the Pinter on Lemons, Lemons times five, as it's because it's that's how I like to.
There's a
Sorry.
lot of
Anyway,
lemons.
there's a lots of lemons in the title. So, am I right in thinking that because one of my question was, how did you like get the job? Was it literally just a case of Rowan, thanks for your work on Lemons. There's this play, A Little Life. Do you want to continue here, or was it something else that did you get the job
Um,
another way?
so I work for the production as opposed to the theatre,
Okay.
on a general basis, and that goes for the majority of production staff. I work for the production as opposed to the theatre, and I was very very lucky to. Lemons was produced by Wessex Grove, who are the
Hmm.
same producers that produced A
Hmm.
Little Life. Um, and through a mix of that and also the incredible Lloyd Thomas, who is the production manager of The Little Life, who actually gave me my first ever job, Constellations.
Wow.
um, I got a text going, "Hello, there's this project. It's quite a big project. Um, can we chat?" And we chatted, and it did take me a little while to say yes, because obviously I had started looking, and then I started reading the book, and obviously that became, I was like, oh wow, okay, this is quite something. It did take me
Mm.
a little while to say yes.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I did, but
Mm.
I said yes, I'd be really interested. Spoke to the producers, and then 6 weeks later, I was I was in the rehearsal room for the meet and greet, and then
Wow.
yeah, that was that. So I was pretty simultaneously kind of working on A Little Life and working on Lemons and leading myself up to A Little Life and kind of getting myself in that headspace ready for that.
Wow.
So I ended up leaving Lemons just before they did their little mini tour,
Hmm.
and then went to Richmond to open A Little Life. So I've been working with Wessex Grove for 6 or 7 months now, and yeah, it's just been amazing. They're really, really lovely producers.
Yeah. So plenty more to come, man. Plenty more to come.
I hope so.
Of course, of course. Just very quickly, I've got a couple of fanboy questions, if you don't
Sure,
mind me asking.
absolutely,
First of all, the director. So you met Ivo Van Hove, right?
absolutely, yeah,
What's
yeah.
it? What's he like?
Just a very, very nice man,
Yeah.
a very, very talented, nice man.
Yeah.
But at its core, Evo is just a very, very lovely person. Um, he's very he's actually, from the fact that he makes, fairly brutal theatre,
Yeah.
he's a very very gentle man. He's just really lovely. He's a very very nice person to be around. And his relationship with the actors was so evident.
Mm.
Everybody in the room just had this huge admiration and respect for him. And he is an amazing theatre maker, but he is also just a very very he's a very nice man. I think
Mm.
that's really the
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
the core of it. He's just a very nice man who makes amazing theatre.
Yeah, fantastic. Big shout out to Evo. You're welcome on
Absolutely.
the show, man. Contact me. And of course, you worked with James Norton as well, who you was the main character, who was Judith Francis. What was he like? Because he comes across as a really, really lovely man.
Again, exactly the same. And I think it goes for everybody on the show.
Yeah,
Incredibly kind, incredibly gentle, incredibly conscientious people with huge hearts. And I
yeah,
think that really goes for the entire team. Um, I think through the casting process and through the process of rehearsals, this team of incredibly conscientious, emotionally mature, um, just lovely people was formed. And I think, I mean, it could not have been a nicer team.
yeah.
And from all of the actors through to all of the backstage staff, the entire production team, everybody was just lovely and nice.
Mm.
And I think that's all you want when you're working on such a big project, you know, to just have everybody be genuinely lovely is all you can ask for.
Yeah,
And that's all they were.
yeah.
It was nothing but sunshine and rainbows, to be honest, on a very,
Right.
very dark show.
No, that's good. That's good. It's you have this very intense show, but the antithesis of it is you have a cast and a director who's just got a heart of gold and just wants to. I mean, it felt like the biggest word I got from it was it felt like a family, because you could see like the relationship not only the actors had, but with the whole crew and everything. And I'm right in thinking, I think I saw a picture of this on This Boy's Instagram, that for the last ever show, which was very recently actually, um, were you invited on stage to take a bow at the end? You and all the backstage crew?
Yeah, so Emily and Ben, the producers, invited everybody on stage by name, which was
Hmm.
just so lovely.
Wow.
And yeah, we joined we joined the cast on stage in front of 1,000 people,
Mm.
which was something that we found quite nerve-wracking, to be honest. But yeah, join these actors, these incredible actors on stage for kind of the last bow of a little life. And it's just an incredibly special experience, and
Mm.
one that, as a group of people backstage, we were just so grateful for.
Yeah.
That recognition and that love and respect is just, always such a lovely thing to have.
Yeah, and so I know because like you be in rehearsal, so I imagine your brain's probably thinking like, okay, we could do that bit here, that bit there, maybe we can have this change here, etc. But I'll get just before I ask that question, when you watched, obviously I'm not going to reveal anything that happens in the play, but when as you saw, because you saw it 8 times a week for about 3 months, like when you saw what was happening to these actors and what was demanded of them, did you ever sit back in rehearsal and go, bloody hell, they're putting in a lot in here. This is intense.
Yeah, so I mean, I was in rehearsals for a few days sporadically. I actually mostly joined the production for the technical rehearsals.
Oh, okay.
Um, but I think the physical demands of what those performers are going through is noticed by everybody.
Yeah, of
I
course.
don't think there is a way in which you could ignore what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that from our point of view, it's one of those things where to have them, go through what they're going through on stage, obviously is a huge undertaking. But to know that they're doing it in an incredibly safe way is
Mhm.
actually the most reassuring thing.
Yeah, of course.
We know that what is happening is safe, although what is happening is, portrayed as very graphic or violent or sad. We know that what is happening is inherently a safe thing,
Hmm.
and that we're doing the most we possibly can
Hmm.
to protect that environment that we want to create backstage, and we're keeping that kind of love and respect for everybody backstage and on stage, throughout, the trauma that we're portraying.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think anybody who worked on the production would kind of agree with that sentiment of all we're doing is making sure that people are safe and allowing them to do their jobs, because I think that's the big thing. What we're doing is we are going to work,
Mm.
we are creating this art, and we are, creating this environment. But what we're doing is going to work, and anybody who goes to work deserves respect and deserves safety.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is making sure people are safe while doing their jobs.
Mm. Exactly. Well said, man. When the one question I had for you was like for tech runs and stuff, because I know tech runs can be a little bit tedious sometimes. There's a lot of stopping, there's a lot of starting. Okay, we need, you might stop at one bit and say, okay, this lighting cue needs to be over here. Right. It's like, Rowan, can you make a note of that? And then it will happen again and again and again. But for a show that lasted nearly 4 hours, what was the tech run of that like, and to get it all together, what was that process like?
Um, it was actually one of the easiest technical processes I've ever done,
Oh, there you go.
which sounds incredibly strange, but it was.
No, not at all.
Everybody was very prepared. Um, Jan, the designer, so Jan designed sets, lighting, and video. Jan had a pre-prescribed list of where he wanted things moved.
Hmm.
He prescribed to me what times he wanted them moved over. So actually, before we even started technical rehearsals, I had programmed the show. I tested everything. I'd made sure it all worked. I'd tweaked some timings, and really all that I needed to do as we went through the technical process was adjust. There were a couple of little minor things that we did. We made things move at slightly different paces, or added a little delay to something to make it look a bit nicer.
Yeah.
And I was able to kind of put my own little kind of flair on things. Um, I mean, I say put a flair on things, make something slow down a little bit slower. There's not really a whole lot of, creative input that you can have. But from my point of view, I'm always kind of honing, because, I get a broad description of what would like to happen. I would like, the kitchen to move on stage.
Mm.
And the big thing with the kitchen is that the ideal was that it wouldn't be seen moving. So I mean, I don't know if you saw the kitchen moving when you watched it at the Pinter.
I don't recall it moving actually.
No.
No.
So it does. It moves. It moves half a meter,
Okay.
but it moves at about a centimeter a second.
Hmm.
So it takes 50 seconds to move the kitchen half a meter. But it's all about sight lines and things. So yeah, exactly. It literally is just a crawl. And you know, sometimes I would be looking at the screen and I'd go, "Is it moving?" And then I'd see it go past a little marker. Oh, yeah, no, it's
Okay, all right, we're safe.
yeah.
Okay, we're good.
But I think it's just one of those things, just putting that little bit of flair and that little bit of kind of, okay, I can make this a bit smoother and I can make this look a tiny bit better. And I think that is kind of what I spent most of the technical rehearsals doing, just making things that little bit smoother. But broadly speaking, Jan, in his infinite preparation, had done pretty much all of the work for me. So I just had to put it in a computer and make it work.
Yeah, there you go. Of course,
Right.
yeah, I know. I think I'm allowed to sort of say this about it. It's not a massive spoiler or anything, but in this show, there was actually food involved.
Yeah.
There was actual live cooking on stage, and
yeah.
I'd say one of my favorite moments in the play was when one of the characters. There were one section had just finished. It was quite intense, and then just out of nowhere, one of the actors just comes into the scene. He's been making this really nice looking dessert for about 20 minutes. I know it's there. I could see it. I could see him making it. But even then he went, "I made dessert." And I was like, "Oh, what is that?" And that dessert looked really nice.
Eat and mess is the answer.
Was it Eat and Mess?
Eat and Mess,
Woo!
which we backstage were allowed to eat every day. It was amazing. I have never had so much Eat and Mess in my entire life.
Wow.
But yeah, all of the cooking on stage is completely real.
Yeah.
There is an oven on stage. There are hobs on stage, all of which that work. There are taps on stage which work. There's fresh water and hot water.
Wow.
It's quite for what looks to be a relatively simple set. And I say simple, not simplistic, because it's not simplistic. It's very complex with all the little set details. But
Yeah.
as an image, it's an incredibly simple space. But there are so many little tricks and elements to it, which are so impressive. I mean, you know, and everything's timed. You know, the oven gets put on to bake the profiteroles for the right amount of time just before the audience come in, and like, it is just it's crazy. I think it's about five different things that are cooked through the show.
Is that one of them's an omelette as well, wasn't it? There was eggs involved.
Yeah, bacon and eggs at the top of the show.
Uh-huh.
And you have the smell of bacon as you come in.
Oh yeah.
Profiteroles, Eat and Mess. There's a pastry type tart with some olives and things on. There's a cake at one point. It's constant food through the show.
Yeah. Wait, does that add some sort of I don't want to say like risk or anything like that, because I'm sure it was all very safe, but when you've got like a live oven, you know, a live hobs, you know, that gets up to very high temperatures, was that also included in like the risk assessment and sort of an extra layer on top of the stage management's kind of to-do list?
Yeah, I believe, I mean, Lloyd, who wrote the risk assessment, I think spent a little while working out what to write, because the thing is, the activity is relatively normal. You know, you would cook at home. So there's nothing that anybody really needed to learn. But obviously there is an element of food hygiene. So we were using across the production, I think 4 different fridges and a freezer to make sure everything was kept separate and happy. A lot of food shopping. A lot of food shopping from stage management's perspective. A lot of what they were doing was constantly buying and prepping food, cutting almonds and things like that. There's a lot of pre-preparation which comes with the territory of doing that on stage. But I believe actually Kaylee and Lou, 2 of the ASMs, did a food hygiene course, because obviously it becomes, because you're serving other people the food and you're not just cooking yourself the food, and there's like a health and safety implication behind that. So yeah, I think they did a food hygiene course in order to kind of make sure that everything was, you know, as safe as it possibly could be.
Yeah. Were the meringues homemade as well?
No, the meringues were shop bought, actually.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know, slightly gutting. I feel like an electric whisk may have been a step too far.
Oh, the egg whites could have been prepared like
Yeah, it's true. We
beforehand.
could have folded. I mean, there were lots of different things. Oh, there's fish cakes as well. They make
Oh
fish
yeah,
cakes.
yeah.
Um,
Because I was lucky. I was one of the lucky people who managed to get a ticket on stage at the
yes.
Pinter, and as soon as you walked in, there was like I won't go into too much detail, but there was like a pre-show, if you could call it. So
Yeah,
there was
absolutely.
there was no like curtain up, curtain down. It was the space was open, and you were in it from the moment you walked in.
For sure.
And I remember the first actor walking on and just started to break eggs, and then put some bacon on. And I was like, it was one
Yeah.
of those very unique experiences in the theatre where I was there watching a piece of art, and I'm going, "What are you making over there? That looks really nice."
For sure.
Yeah,
And actually a lot of people didn't think it was real. A lot of people thought we had trick ovens or trick hobs, but the
no,
reality is much simpler than that in that they just cooked, you
yeah,
know.
and did
They
it
cooked
very
their
well.
bacon and eggs. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I mean, the actor made the Eton mess. I was like, what is that? Well, thank you for telling me it was Eton mess, by the way. I was thinking,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
is that? Is that some kind of big
Yeah.
yogurt or something? I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But it looked really good. But just from a technical perspective, what was like, I know earlier I asked you about GSA, a typical day in the life. What was it like at Richmond and the Pinter and very recently the Savoy? Like you specifically, what time would you get to the theatre? And what would you do first thing, last thing, and what time would you normally get out?
So for a 7 o'clock show, we'd arrive at the theatre at about 4:30.
Hmm.
I power on my system, so I dealt with all the plumbing. I
Hmm.
dealt with the Foy system and the Absolute system, which were my systems of motion control, basically. I'd go and turn those on. I then go around and do all of my visual safety checks, checking in all the floor tracks to make sure there was nothing in there. And then once everything was powered on, I'd start doing my rig checks. So I basically just check every axis of movement, make sure that it moved freely. There was no kind of, little nicks, scratches, things that we needed to tighten, anything like that.
Hmm.
Do all of that, which took about half an hour till about 5 o'clock. And then if stage management needed a hand, I'd sometimes give them a hand with their reset because they have obviously quite a big reset to do.
Mm.
Um, I would check all of my systems. So I check that my comms was working, and I check the performer flying cage, things like that. Um, and then from there on, I would go on break while the actors warmed up. Come back to open the house and get everything ready there. We do a couple more final checks at the house open. Show would start at 7 o'clock. Do the show, and at the end of the show, power down, which takes about 5 minutes. And then
Hmm.
typically, I could sometimes be out before the audience, depending on the day.
Hmm.
So sometimes I was out before the audience if there was little things that I needed to do, or show reports to contribute to. I would sometimes stay around,
Yeah.
but typically I'd be out between sort of 10:45 and 11.
Mm. Nice.
So yeah, 4:30 till 11 with about an hour's break.
Yeah. And a double show day.
Double show day.
Oh, tell me about that experience.
A bit crazy. So we ended up having about a 45-minute break between shows.
5 minutes.
45 minutes between the last thing that we did and the first thing that we did.
Wow.
We were very, very lucky in that the producers were providing some lunch for us between shows on those days,
Oh, nice.
which made a huge difference, a
Yeah.
huge, huge difference,
Mm.
just to morale as much as anything.
Yeah.
Knowing that there was food waiting for you so you could do your job, have some
Mm.
food, and then get back to work. But around a 45 minute, sometimes about an hour, depending on how quickly you got your tasks done. So normal routine, really. But then twice.
Mm.
So I would arrive at about 11 o'clock and leave at about 11 o'clock on a 2 show day.
12-hour day.
12-hour day. But again, we had lots of regular breaks. Food was provided for us. So actually, those days are quite broken up.
Mm.
And the reason you arrive so early is just in case you need to fix something. You know, if something's not
Yeah.
working and you go and test it, you have then a buffer time of an hour or so to fix it.
Yeah.
But we were very lucky in that very, very rarely happened with the show. There were very rarely bits of maintenance that we needed to do, and we were keeping up to date with all of our maintenance through the weeks. So it ended up being quite a nice, it was a relaxed 12-hour day, shall we say.
Well, that's good. That's good because,
Absolutely, yeah.
again, this the antithesis of such a really intense play to have such a relaxed vibe backstage as well as
For sure.
on there. I always get this feeling of like I've spoken to a couple of actors on the show who've done intense plays, like they've done The Crucible. I remember at the Old Vic in 2014, and very intense stuff. And I just remember them. I remember asking one actor, "What's it like?" I can imagine you, and not just yourself and the cast, but the whole backstage crew and everything. Probably yourselves on A Little Life. Was this ever the case where you wake up on a 2-show day and you just go, "Here we go again. Here we go again."
Yeah, the weeks were long. I think there is very much a sense of, because the show's long, especially for me, I always found, because my commute's about 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. So you would get home at, between 11:30 and midnight. And then you would be back out of the door at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So there were days where it was tough, but I think I think what everybody did was end up establishing a schedule. And as soon as you're in that schedule and you've established that schedule, you know when you can take that little bit of time. Yes, I'm coming in early, but actually I've then got an hour's break, half an hour before I get in, so I can go and have my breakfast then, or and I think from my point of view, yes, the weeks were long, but we also had at the Pinter especially a really lovely float system, so we were able to take a show out of the theatre each week, because we were very well covered. We had an amazing technical swing, Nathan, at the Pinter, and Megan at the Savoy, who were able to kind of cover us for those moments where we were able to be out of the theatre.
Nice.
And that's quite common across the West End, actually, with regards to backstage staff, just because of that extra couple of hours each day, taking that kind of show out of the building, still on call, but out of the building, is just very nice to be able to kind of go, okay, is that 2 days off a week as opposed to the one, or
Yeah, well, that's good. Is that why they call them swings? Because then they can...
So our technical swings work in a very similar sense to the onstage swings that you have, and they will learn the jobs of anywhere usually between about 2 and 5 members of the technical team. So Nathan did the sound number 2. Me as the automation engineer, the lighting operators plot, and then one of the stage management plots. And Megan did sound, lighting, and automation.
Okay.
So what that meant was basically on a weekly basis, as a technical swing, they would spend the week rotating between departments and doing different shows on different nights. So one night there would be lighting, one night there'd be sound, one night there'd be automation, one night there'd be... So it would just rotate round constantly. Some of the hardest working people in theatre, in the same way as swings are. I mean, I started my career backstage as a technical swing, and I think it's one of the most rewarding but demanding jobs in theatre, because you are learning 5 people's jobs and having to do them on a rotating basis. Remembering 5 jobs every single night. It's a bit crazy.
Yeah, mental, man. I mean, what's it like having sort of 5 jobs in your head at any one time? I mean, it's like you walk in the theatre one day and you're on sound, and the next day you're on lighting, next day you're on props backstage, or whatever you do. What's that like?
And some days 2 at once.
2 at once.
So some days, if there's 2 people ill, you would then do like a split track, like you would on stage. That has occasionally been the case. It's tricky. I mean, the best way that I've ever heard of it is Megan, who was my tech swing for the Savoy, said to me, whenever I'm doing one job, I'm thinking about all of the other ones that I'm not doing. So you're sat there operating automation, going, so I'd be over there for sound, and I'd be over there for lighting, and for the stage plot, I'd be there doing this. And you're just always thinking of all of those different things at once.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's, I mean, I'm sure it's exactly the same for the performers. You know, whenever they're on, they're going, so tomorrow I'm going to be there doing that. And now I need to reverse this. And it's just constantly that
Mm.
mentality of knowing that on any day you could be anywhere in the theatre.
Mm.
You know, for Magic Goes Wrong, I covered 5 different plots.
Mm.
Um, and it was just all the time, you know, you're just going, okay, but this is there and that's there. And then what do I do here? And then sometimes, you know, you get a bit muddled, but I always personally keep my tracks and a little tiny A6 piece of paper. Um, so if I need to, I can go, that's what I'm doing. Because otherwise you get lost, you know,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
these theaters are big and busy, and you can literally get lost behind a piece of set and go, how do I get out of here? You know.
That's amazing. Um, Tell me about just about your we were talking before we came on about first of all, like two questions in one really, like what's it like working at the Pinter because it's such a lovely theatre, and also you talked about how you had the kind of like a cave, like a man cave sort of in the corner on the stage, right? What's it like working in that theatre, and what was it like having like your own space 8 times a week?
I adored the Pinter.
Yeah,
Their in-house
it's so
team are
good.
just lovely. Their stage door staff are brilliant. Yeah, Tony, Jay, James, Jack, Ryan, they're just all just the most lovely group of people.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a small space, it's an intimate space, and I spent 10 months there in
Mm.
varying different positions on varying different shows. Um, it was so lovely actually to see the space being used differently each time as well. Um, but yeah, for the Pinter run, underneath the pavement by stage door, there are 2 catacombs. And actually, if you ever visit the Pinter and you walk up towards stage door, you
Hmm.
can see little glass grates by the wall
Hmm.
leading up to stage door. And under one of those glass grates was where I sat for 4 months while I was at the Pinter. And I was in, yeah, in essence, a cave operating automation.
Oh, there you go.
And I like to say that because everything that I was watching was through screens, everything was through cameras and screens, they could have been playing me a recording for 3 months and I wouldn't have known. Like I could have been watching a recording of the show for 3 months every night and just pressing buttons, not doing anything, and I would not have had a clue.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, at least you got paid for
100%, yeah, yeah, yeah.
it.
But like very kind of you know, you're isolated, which increases your focus, but also it can be a bit lonely. And you know, I would spend a lot of time whenever I wasn't running queues. I had certain breaks between different queues.
Yeah.
I'd go and kind of socialize with others because otherwise you do end up literally in that kind of, well, cave headspace. You know, you're just on your own for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
um and then for the Savoy and Richmond, I was on stage, which was really nice actually, because it enabled the actors as much as anybody to see what I did, because we got to the Pinter and I in essence would disappear during the show.
Mm.
um and it got to sort of week 6 or week 7 at the Pinter, and Zach came around the corner and saw me going into this little cave and went, where the hell are you going? And I went, oh, I work here. And he went, what? And he came down and saw this cave and he was like, I thought you were like up somewhere or in a box. Or but literally I was in this little tiny cave called the Catacombs at the
Cool.
Pinter. I absolutely loved it. Yeah, it was great fun. I'll send you a photo at some point of the
Oh no,
Catacombs.
please do, man. I'd love to see it. But you said also you did spend some time on stage, right? So you were like
For
stage
sure.
right for a lot of the time, so you could see, you know, you weren't, you were sort of just behind the kitchen, weren't you, on that side, weren't you?
Yeah, so the catacomb basically, my water plant, as I'd call it, all of my kind of plumbing and stuff was stage right, and my catacomb was literally a couple of steps down from there. So whenever I wasn't operating, I'd be up literally behind the kitchen with Lou, the stage right ASM,
Mm.
doing all of her food prep and stuff as it went. Is I mean, it is a complete machine backstage, the show,
Oh yeah.
and as quiet as it is, everybody is quietly working all the time.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it is a complete machine show.
Yeah. Amazing stuff, man. Yeah, this is good stuff. I'm just thinking about you mentioned all the challenges there and everything. So, but a big one question I have for you today: what would you say were the rewards? Because for a show like what you did at the end, of course, it was very rewarding. Because all the hard work you put in got such a strong reaction from the audience, on a very positive level. Um, you must sort of got to the end of like say you finish your last show on a Saturday night. Oh no, sorry, Sunday afternoon, because you did Sundays, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You get to the end of the last show of the week on a Sunday afternoon, and all of you backstage must have just gone, "Ah, do you know what? We're done well this week. We've done well."
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. It is a massively rewarding experience because you know that you are putting a lot of hours into
yeah,
this project, and um but yeah, the audience reactions are worth it, and the impact that you're having on people is worth it. Some of these
mm,
people have flown halfway around the world
yeah,
who are fans of the book, who have flown from, I mean, we had people fly from everywhere. We had people fly from Turkey. There's an amazing video on the Instagram somewhere, um, of people telling us where they'd come from.
mm,
Um, and these people are flying around the world to experience their favorite book or this piece that has massively impacted them in front of them. Um, and I still can't quite get over the fact that, you know, over 170,000 people came to see what we did.
yeah,
Like it's just um slightly incomprehensible to me as
yeah,
to what we've done, the magnitude of the thing that we produced, because it
mm,
it was it was a big show. And at the time, because you're backstage or you're even on stage, you're in this little bubble of,
mm,
30 people who work on the show.
mm,
It feels quite small.
yeah,
It feels like this little world that you're in. But
yeah,
actually, when you look at the numbers, it is just this behemoth play. And we're all like, oh, it's just a little play. We're
yeah,
we're
yeah, yeah,
backstage tootling along, doing our jobs each day and going, but every single night we're creating this incredible emotional impact on people. And you
yeah,
don't think about it. Some days you just forget about that aspect of it.
mm,
And then suddenly you're like, oh, we really did like do this show to 900 new people last night,
yeah,
all of whom kind of had this experience.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just a very, very surreal experience when you kind of put it into context like that.
Yeah, that's like more than two Wembley stadiums full of people,
It's
maybe even three. Lots of Wembley
Most definitely
Stadium.
right.
How many people came to see it? That's insane.
And potentially, hundreds of thousands more in the cinemas.
Well, yeah, there's going to be. I mean, this thing's going to go
Yeah,
everywhere to people who
it's my
couldn't
hope.
make it. Yeah,
It's and there's a lot of countries that it's being, um, put in cinemas in, and it's just like my work's going to be seen in Australia. It's so weird.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
They're going to think we need to get the number of Rowan. How do we get him? How do we get him?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Of course it will, man. Of course it will. And you mentioned there, I wanted to ask you about, because it was such an extraordinary piece, you've got such big and bold reactions from the audiences that did come and see it. What was your experience of seeing the audience at the end every night, or what or stories that you heard?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting actually because I spent quite a while at the Pinter,
Mm,
in my little cave,
yeah,
which was relatively acoustically isolated.
yeah,
So I sort of forgot from Richmond what those reactions were like.
mm,
And the first night that I sat on stage at the Savoy and I heard the audience reaction, I welled up a bit because I was like, we've been doing this every night for 3 months and I've not heard this.
mm,
And suddenly you're like, this is loud. This is
yeah,
a lot of people clapping and standing up and cheering and experiencing and crying. And like, it's just, this huge thing, that I completely sort of forgot about. And yeah, hearing that for the first night at the Savoy was just, I mean, yeah, put chills down my spine, to be honest.
yeah,
And then going out and seeing all of those people standing up on the
mm,
last night at the Savoy was, I mean,
yeah.
something altogether different. It was just, yeah, crazy, very, very strange.
Insane. Yeah, because I know a friend of a friend went to, well, a friend of mine went to see it, and her friend who she took, She saw her at the Pinter, and she deals with. I think I'm right. I think she works in counselling and stuff like that, and a lot of people that she saw or speaks to were very much similar to Jude and what he went through. And she recognized, just I think it's a testament to everyone involved in the project, and like yourself and everyone, just you captured something really authentic and very, very real, and a lot of people grasped onto that and they could see it, and they really got that strong reaction. I think that just shows that not only just the actors and everything, what they did, and Evo and all the creatives behind that, but how you backstage also helped to generate this amazing thing. And this show, I think, will go down as possibly one of the biggest theatrical events ever in London, and I think around the world, because it's going to get beamed not only to cinemas. We're hearing whispers of Broadway. We don't know if there's any truth in that, but yeah, I suppose a question really to sort of cap a little life really is just if it was offered to you again. So if the producers call you up and say, Rowan, we're going to Broadway, you're in or out, what would you say?
Um, I think for a lot of us, having the Savoy run at the end of the Pinter
Yeah.
gave us this incredible closure on the piece.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, I would absolutely go and help. So I would go and maybe do an associate role and assist them in setting the piece up. But I think a lot of us would probably say that we've had this incredible closure on the piece. We've
Yeah.
had this
Yeah.
this amazing experience, and I don't think I would want to try and replicate it.
Yeah.
And I would hold myself to try and replicating it in anywhere else, in any other territory, or wherever. I think the piece to me has had such a special kind of impact, that to try and replicate that again, I don't think would be right for me.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how to put that in better words. I would love to have a connection with this piece,
Yeah.
for a long period of time, but with regards to, going and doing the whole process again, I've had this incredible closure and I've had this incredible time.
Yeah.
And I think to go and try and seek to replicate that would not be the healthy choice for me at this stage. Give it 2 years.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Give it 2 years, and they go, we're bringing it back to London. Maybe.
Yeah.
But I at this point in time, I've had this incredible closure that actually, I would like to sit and reflect for a while, as opposed to kind of thinking about the future with the piece.
Yeah, it's almost like you've left it on such a good point. It'd be a shame to sort of keep it going. You've left it on such a good note. Let's keep it that way.
I think that's everybody's thoughts. I think everybody has come out of this experience so happy and so fulfilled. And I think actually, having this 5 weeks at the Savoy was able to give us that closure that perhaps we wouldn't have had if we'd have finished at the Pinter. I think having that extra sort of 5 weeks to go, okay, we're winding down. We're in a new venue, but we're winding down. That space and that time, and that slight point of difference made so much impact. I mean, we had the best time at the Savoy. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
Because we were all like, this is the home stretch. We're doing it. We're still making this thing, but we're nearly at this point of closure. And that last night of the closure of the piece and being able to say goodbye to everybody so sincerely was really lovely.
Yeah. Brilliant stuff. Just got 2 more questions for you, Rowan, today. But first of all, just thank you for your time, and thank you for opening up about A Little Life. It's just been amazing to hear all the secrets from backstage and everything. And do you know what? I'm really glad you told me it was eating mess, because I was thinking that for a long time.
That was the one thing you've gained.
No, don't be silly. No, I've gained a lot, man. I've gained a lot, but just I was thinking, what is that dessert? I was eating mess. Great. No, that's not the only thing. But thanks for just telling me about. I never knew anything about backstage stuff. It's not really my sort of area of expertise, but but it's been so great to hear about everything and how valuable it is. It's not just about the actors; it's also about how the people backstage create it as well. And you've done some amazing work so far, and I'm sure you're going to continue making be a part of some amazing stuff to come in the future. And I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see what else you do. And yeah, thanks for a little life and help making it happen. So
Thanks for having me. No, it's been really good fun.
good stuff, man. So just two more questions for you, mate. Um, for anyone listening or watching who's interested in this area of work, I think about applying to drama school like GSA to do production management, stage management, or any other school who is really intent on taking this seriously and making a career out of it, what advice do you think you would give to those people?
Um, don't just take the word of your educators as gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Do other things. Um, my big thing that I've told other people who are currently at GSA and who have done the same course as me is it is a research-based course. And if you're not doing as much research in your own time and as much kind of shadowing and experience in your own time as you are in your classes, it's not you're not going to benefit. So just learn everything. Yeah, you want to be a stage manager, but learn lighting, learn sound, because when you're in technical rehearsal and the lighting department is saying, I need to do this, and you have no idea what they're talking about, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just educate yourself in every way possible. Understand what the actors are doing, understand what the other departments are doing. Go out and ask people if you can watch them do their job. Anybody in the West End, we're boring people. We love talking about our jobs. And like just ask somebody,
Yeah.
can I come and watch you do your job? Yes, of course. Everybody will say yes. And just continue to ask those questions. And ask them of people that you admire, and also ask them of people that perhaps learn from everyone. Is the key thing. If somebody does something that you don't particularly agree with, learn from that.
Yeah.
Learn how to do it differently, and think about how you would do that thing differently. Because I mean, the most valuable thing that you can do is teach yourself. And if you learn to teach yourself, then you can take any amount of experience and apply it to your own context. And usually 9 times out of 10 come up with an answer that works.
Brilliant stuff. Well said. I think, God, I wish I got in touch with you sooner. I could have shadowed you for a little life. I'd be like, Rowan, can I come backstage tonight?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll bear that in mind for the future. It's all good, man. But yeah, fantastic stuff, man. I'm sure a lot of people who've listened to yourself today or watched yourself, have really gained a lot and a really good insight into what it's like to work in a major London theatre, and particularly on a big show as well, like A Little Life, and of course, Good and Lemons and Constellations and all that. It's really important stuff and how to put it all together. So thank you for that. So thank you for your knowledge and everything, and your experiences have been so gracious with that. It's just been amazing, mate. Just one final question for you today. This is the final question for every guest, is what's been an experience or experiences you've had in your career up to this point that you're never, ever going to forget?
I mean, I think actually the thing that I'm never going to forget is the last cue of A Little Life.
Mm-hmm.
This huge box and cage sequence that obviously there's so much adrenaline running through you. You know that things are moving, and you know that you're, incredibly safety critical. And also there's always that niggling doubt in your mind of what happens if it doesn't move, and I fired the last cue, Q15, only 15 cues in the show. I fired Q15, it started moving, and I completely broke. Like, I just completely broke down. I was a mess. And Megan and one of the front of house staff had to run and get me some tissues because I was like streaming eyes watching this thing move.
Oh, mate.
I was a complete mess, but just that sense of complete overwhelm and relief. And at that point, I knew it was done. Like, I knew this project was over, and there was the emotion of the project being over. And I just think that moment, I've never experienced anything like it. I just completely broke. I was a broken man, and it took me pretty much until about 10 seconds before we were going on stage to go, you need to get your adrenaline back up now because you're about to walk out in front of 1,000 people. And it's just this amazing like out of body experience of going, I'm a broken man. And it's taken me, I mean, it's been 6 days since we closed, and it's it took me 2 days to leave the house.
Oh, really?
So it's just that recovery process, and that kind of, I wouldn't say grief, but it's that healing process, and going, okay, now we need to think about the next thing. It's always about the next thing.
Yeah, those post-show blues hit different.
100%. Always looking forward. Always looking forward,
man. Always looking forward. Fantastic stuff, man. Rohan, thank you so much, man. This has been a really, really great chat, and I've really enjoyed listening to you and everything. And I can't wait to see what more you do. And great to have another member of the GSA family on the show again. Absolutely. And it shows the good work that we do, which is great. Great stuff, man. So, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic. If you just hang on, Rohan, I'll finish the recording. I'll say goodbye to you one-to-one. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic, and I'll be back very soon. And once again, just Rohan, thank you, mate. Thank you, sir.